The late summer heat of Willow Creek, Texas, carried with it a heaviness that seemed to linger in the air. The town was small, built on quiet streets, red brick houses, and a main street that everyone passed through at least once a day. Willow Creek wasn't a place of secrets, or so the townsfolk liked to believe. But behind closed doors, every family carried shadows, some darker than others. David Miller stood at the front porch of his modest two-story home, his calloused hands gripping the wooden railing. He had been awake since dawn, his mind circling the same thoughts that had haunted him for weeks. His late wife's younger sister Clara was gone. Cancer had taken her quickly, too. Quickly, and now her 16-year-old daughter, Lily Carter, was left without a mother. The responsibility had fallen on him. David was not an unkind man. Years of working construction had built his body into something solid, dependable, but his heart was softer than he often let on. He had promised Clara years ago, during one of her chemotherapy sessions, that if anything ever happened, he would take care of Lily. That promise now sat, heavy on his shoulders like a burden made of stone. "Are you sure about this?" The voice came from behind him. Sophia Miller, his second wife, stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. Even in the sweltering heat, she wore a pressed blouse and slacks, her auburn hair pinned neatly. There was a sharpness to her features that matched the tone in her voice. David exhaled, looking out at the empty road. "I don't have a choice, Sophia. She's family. Clara would have done the same if it were Ethan left behind." Sophia's lips tightened. She didn't reply immediately, but her silence was louder than words. Ethan Miller, their 23-year-old son, appeared on the staircase inside, pulling on a faded denim jacket even though the weather begged for short sleeves. His dark hair was unruly, his eyes thoughtful. He studied his parents quietly for a moment before stepping out onto the porch. "When's she getting here?" he asked, his tone careful. David checked his watch. Any minute now. The bus should have arrived in town by now. Sophia shifted uncomfortably. "David, let's be realistic. A 16-year-old girl? We barely make ends meet as it is. And you know what people in town will say, bringing her here? After everything." David turned sharply toward her, his eyes hardening. "After what, Sophia? After the fact that she's an orphan? That her mother, your husband's late wife's sister, died too young? What do you want me to do? Leave her alone in Houston? Send her to foster care?" The words hung in the air like a blade. Sophia flinched, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. "All I'm saying is this house is not a shelter for every broken soul in your late wife's family." The front gate creaked. All three turned. A small figure walked slowly up the path, dragging a battered suitcase with one hand. Lily Carter looked even smaller than David remembered. Her long, dark hair framed a pale face, her brown eyes wide and hollow from grief. She wore a simple cotton dress wrinkled from travel, and sneakers that had seen better days. The weight of her mother's death clung to her shoulders, making her look as if the world had pressed her down before. She had even begun to live it. "Lily," David said softly, moving down the steps to meet her. His voice cracked despite himself. She gave him a small, polite smile, but her lips trembled. "Uncle David." The suitcase fell from her hand as David wrapped his arms around her. For a long moment, she stayed still, rigid. And then, quietly, her thin arms rose to cling to him. Her shoulders shook once, but no sound came from her. Ethan looked away, swallowing hard. Sophia, however, kept her arms crossed, her face unreadable. "Come inside," David murmured, taking her suitcase. "You're home now." The Miller household was modest but warm. Photographs lined the hallway walls, mostly of Ethan's baseball years in high school, family gatherings, and vacations by the lake. But one photo always stood out, a framed picture of David's late wife, Margaret. Her gentle smile, captured on a sunny day, watched over the living room like a ghost that never left. Sophia hated that photo. She had never said it outright, but the way her gaze avoided it was enough. Lily noticed it immediately as she entered. She paused, her fingers twitching slightly. Margaret had been her mother's closest friend, more than a sister-in-law. To see her face again, frozen in time, made Lily's eyes sting. "Do you want some water?" Ethan asked quietly, stepping forward. "Yes, please," Lily said, her voice fragile. He gave her a small nod and disappeared into the kitchen. David placed Lily's suitcase by the stairs. "You'll be staying in the guest room upstairs, right next to Ethan's. It's not much, but it's yours." "Thank you," she whispered. Sophia finally spoke, her tone tight. "Lily, why don't you freshen up before dinner?" I'll set the table." Lily gave her a polite nod. "Okay." As the girl slowly ascended the stairs, Sophia turned sharply to David, her eyes flashing. "This is a mistake. Mark my words, David. This girl will bring nothing but tension into this house." David clenched his jaw. "She's a child, Sophia. A child who just lost her mother. Show some compassion." "Compassion?" Sophia's laugh was bitter. "Don't lecture me about compassion when you still live under the shadow of your first wife. Look at her, David. She's Margaret's mirror. Every day she spends here will remind you of her. And you expect me to just smile?" David's voice dropped to a warning tone. "Enough." For a moment, the only sound in the house was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. That night, dinner was a strained affair. The four of them sat around the table, David at the head, Sophia to his right, Ethan to his left, and Lily directly across from Sophia. The clatter of cutlery was too loud, every scrape of fork against plate echoing in the silence. "So, Lily," David said gently, trying to break the tension. "How was the trip?" Lily set down her fork. "Long, the bus was crowded." "Did anyone help you with your luggage?" Ethan asked. She shook her head. "No, it was fine." Sophia's lips pursed. 16 is a little too young to be traveling alone, don't you think?" Lily looked down, cheeks coloring. I didn't have much of a choice." David shot Sophia a warning glance, but she ignored it. "I suppose not," she added, sipping her water with an air of finality. The rest of the meal passed in near silence. Ethan tried a few times to ask Lily about school, her favorite books or music, but each answer was short, polite, almost rehearsed. Grief had built a wall around her, and she wasn't ready to let anyone in. Later, after Lily had gone upstairs, David sat on the porch alone, staring into the night. The cicadas sang their endless chorus. His heart felt heavy, pulled in 3 directions, toward the duty he owed Clara, the resentment radiating from Sophia, and the uncertain burden that rested on Ethan's young shoulders. Inside, Sophia moved through the kitchen with sharp movements, her thoughts a storm. And upstairs, Ethan leaned against his bedroom wall, listening to the muffled sound of Lily crying in the room next door. Willow Creek was quiet that night. But within the Miller household, the shadows had already begun to stir. The days that followed Lily's arrival at the Miller household were painted in an uneasy quiet. The house had always carried noise. David's heavy footsteps coming in late from work, Sophia's sharp commands echoing from the kitchen, Ethan's laughter when friends dropped by, but now, silence threaded through the walls like an unwelcome guest. Lily moved quietly, as if she were afraid of disturbing the balance, her presence ghost-like. She kept her head down, ate little, and spoke only when spoken to. David noticed. Every morning before heading to work, he would glance toward the staircase, half expecting to see Lily there, but she rarely appeared. Sometimes he would find her in the backyard, sitting on the old wooden swing that creaked with every sway. She never swung high, just enough to rock herself gently, her eyes fixed on the horizon, as though waiting for someone who would never come back. Sophia's tolerance thinned with each passing day. She was cordial in front of David, polite in front of the neighbors, but the moment his back was turned, her words carried a sting. "Don't just leave your shoes by the door. Lily, this isn't a motel. Or, if you're going to stay here, at least make yourself useful. Wash those dishes properly." The remarks were small, sharp cuts, each one leaving a mark. Ethan saw them all. He didn't intervene at first. He knew his mother too well. Every argument with her ended in fire. And Lily, delicate as she was, couldn't handle that blaze. So he tried subtle kindnesses instead. He'd leave a glass of lemonade on the porch when she sat outside, or slip his old novels onto her nightstand when he saw her, staring at the empty bookshelf in her room. Sometimes he caught her reading in the dim lamplight late at night, her lips moving silently with the words. One evening, after a particularly tense dinner where Sophia criticized the way Lily folded the napkins, Ethan found her sitting on the back steps, hugging her knees. The air smelled of freshly cut grass, and the crickets chirped in the darkness. "You'll get used to it," he said softly, leaning against the railing. Lily looked up, startled. "To what?" "My mother," Ethan replied. His voice was calm, but his jaw tightened. "She has a way of making people feel like they don't belong. But it's not you. It's her." Lily hesitated. "She doesn't want me here." He sighed. "No, she doesn't. But my dad does. And so do I." Her eyes glistened. She turned away quickly, wiping at them with the back of her hand. "I didn't ask for any of this." I know, Ethan said, his voice lowering. And it's not your fault. You lost your mom, Lily. That's a wound that doesn't heal easily. He paused, searching for the right words. Just don't let her make you feel small. You're stronger than you think. For the first time since arriving, Lily allowed a tiny smile. Fragile, fleeting, but real. Inside the house, Sophia watched through the kitchen window, her hands gripping the edge of the sink. A storm brewed in her chest. Every word Ethan gave to that girl felt like betrayal. Every glance, another reminder of Margaret, the woman whose shadow she had never escaped. That night, when David returned home, Sophia didn't wait long before speaking. This can't go on. David, exhausted, rubbed his temples. What now? She's turning Ethan against me. I saw them out there, talking like they've known each other their whole lives. Do you realize what you're doing to this family by keeping her here? David's voice rose, sharper than he intended. What I'm doing? Sophia, I'm trying to honor a promise. Clara trusted me with her daughter. Do you expect me to throw her into the system? To strangers? You think that's what family does? Sophia's eyes blazed. Family? Don't you dare preach to me about family. You think I don't notice? The way you look at her? She's Margaret's reflection. David, every time you see that girl, you see your first wife. Don't deny it. His fist slammed against the table. Enough! The sound startled even him. He had never raised his voice like that before. The silence afterward was deafening. Sophia stared at him, wounded pride flashing across her face, before she stormed upstairs, slamming the bedroom door. Ethan, who had been sitting on the staircase, unseen by both, closed his eyes. The house was cracking, fissures spreading faster than anyone could seal them. Days later, the tension spilled beyond the walls. At church on Sunday, whispers followed them. People in Willow Creek had sharp eyes and sharper tongues. They noticed the quiet girl with downcast eyes sitting beside David. Noticed Sophia's stiff posture. Noticed Ethan's protective glances. By the time they returned home, Sophia's anger was simmering. Do you hear them? Everyone is talking. They think we've lost control of our own house. They think you're raising someone else's child. Because you can't let go of the past. David turned to her slowly, his voice low, dangerous. Let them talk. I don't care what this town thinks. My concern is Lily's safety. But safety to David meant more than Sophia could understand. He had begun to notice the way the boys at the grocery store looked at Lily. The way men lingered too long when she passed by. 16 was an age caught between innocence and danger, and David knew too well how cruel the world could be. At night, lying awake beside a wife who no longer touched him, he thought of ways to keep Lily safe. He thought of the promise he'd made, and how quickly the world could snatch her away if he wasn't careful. Ethan, meanwhile, wrestled with his own turmoil. He admired his father's loyalty, but he couldn't ignore the desperation in his tone, the way responsibility weighed on him until his shoulders curved under the burden. And then there was Lily, who had begun to look at Ethan with a quiet trust that both comforted and unnerved him. She clung to his words, his reassurances, as though they were lifelines in an endless storm. One night, as thunder rolled outside and rain lashed against the windows, Lily knocked softly on Ethan's door. I can't sleep, she whispered when he opened it. Her eyes were wide, her hair damp from the humidity. The storm, it reminds me of the night Mom... She stopped, her voice breaking. Without thinking, Ethan stepped aside. She sat on the edge of his bed, trembling, wrapping her arms around herself. For a moment, they just sat in silence. The storm raging outside, their breaths filling the quiet inside. You don't have to be afraid, Ethan said finally. You're not alone here. Her eyes met his, shining with tears. Sometimes I feel like I am. The words cut deep. He wanted to tell her she wasn't, that she never would be as long as he was there. But the weight of that promise pressed heavily on his tongue. Instead, he simply nodded, and they sat together until her breathing slowed and the storm passed. Outside the room, down the hall, David stood in the shadows, unseen. He had gone to check on Ethan, to perhaps speak with his son about the growing rift between him and Sophia. But when he saw Lily sitting there, vulnerable, leaning into Ethan's quiet strength, something twisted inside him. The fear he carried deepened, darkened. He knew then, if he didn't act soon, the world would find a way to break her. And he had sworn never to let that happen. The late September air in Willow Creek was restless, carrying with it the bite of oncoming autumn. The Miller house reflected that tension, shutters rattling in the wind, doors creaking on their hinges, and conversations growing heavier with each passing day. Lily's presence, though quiet and unassuming, had become the center of a storm no one wanted to acknowledge. David had grown more protective, almost obsessively so. He drove Lily to school every morning, waiting outside in his truck until the bell rang, and he was back before dismissal to pick her up. He monitored her time online, questioned her about every friend she mentioned, and frowned at the smallest details. When she came home one afternoon with a simple friendship bracelet a girl at school had given her, David's reaction startled even himself. "Where'd you get that?" he demanded, his voice sharper than intended. Lily, startled, held out her wrist. "A friend at school. Her name's Amber. She just made it for me." David stared at it for a long moment, his jaw tightening. "Take it off." Her face fell. "But it's just—" "I said take it off," he snapped before softening his tone. "You don't know what people's intentions are, Lily. Not everyone is kind." Ethan, watching from the living room doorway, clenched his fists. Later that night, he confronted his father. "Dad, you can't control every part of her life. She's 16. She's trying to adjust, to make friends. You're suffocating her." David's eyes burned with a fierce determination. "You don't understand, Ethan. The world is not safe. She's young, she's vulnerable. Do you want her to end up like—" He stopped himself abruptly, turning away. "Like who?" Ethan pressed. David didn't answer. Instead, he muttered, "I won't fail her the way I failed before." The words hung between them like smoke, thick and suffocating. Ethan wanted to demand clarity, but the rawness in his father's voice silenced him. Sophia, meanwhile, was unraveling in her own way. Her resentment had grown into outright hostility. Every kindness Ethan showed Lily, every protective gesture David made, was like salt rubbed into an old wound. One evening, when David wasn't home, Sophia cornered Lily in the kitchen. "You think you're innocent, don't you?" Her tone was sharp, venomous. Lily froze, clutching the dish towel in her hand. I don't know what you mean." Sophia stepped closer, her voice lowering. "I see the way my husband looks at you. I see the way my son defends you. You're tearing this family apart, and you don't even have to try. You're just like your mother, always taking, never thinking about the damage left behind." Tears stung Lily's eyes. "I don't want to cause trouble," she whispered. "I didn't ask to be here." "Then maybe you shouldn't be," Sophia hissed, before storming out, leaving Lily trembling by the sink. That night, Lily barely touched her dinner. Ethan noticed her swollen eyes, but she wouldn't meet his gaze. Afterward, he caught her slipping outside, sitting on the swing, her arms wrapped around herself. He joined her without a word, letting the silence stretch until she finally spoke. "She hates me," Lily said softly, her voice cracking. "She doesn't hate you," Ethan said gently, though he knew it was a lie. "She's angry. At life, at Dad, at things you have nothing to do with. It's not about you." Lily shook her head. "No, she meant it. I can feel it." Ethan's chest ached. He wanted to tell her the truth, that Sophia had always resented anything tied to Margaret. But he knew that burden wasn't Lily's to carry. Instead, he reached out and gently touched her hand. "Don't let her words define you. You're stronger than you think." David saw them again through the window. His chest tightened, but this time it wasn't suspicion. It was fear. Fear that Ethan's bond with Lily would complicate everything. Fear that Sophia's venom would eventually destroy the girl. Fear that the world outside would take advantage of her fragility. That fear grew into an idea. Dangerous, drastic. 2 nights later, David called Ethan into the study. The room smelled faintly of tobacco, though David hadn't smoked in years, and the desk was littered with bills and old photographs. David closed the door behind his son, his face grim. "I need to talk to you about something important," he began. Ethan frowned. "All right." David leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "You know how vulnerable Lily is. She has no one else but us. The world is cruel, Ethan. I've seen too much to let her face it alone." Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand. But Dad protecting her doesn't mean controlling her." David's eyes hardened. "I'm not just talking about control. I'm talking about security, permanence. She needs a shield, something that ensures no one can hurt her, no one can take advantage." He paused, his voice dropping. "She needs you." Ethan blinked. "What do you mean?" David exhaled, as though saying it aloud required strength. "I want you to marry her." The words struck Ethan like a blow. He stared at his father, unable to process what he'd just heard. Marry her? She's 16, Dad. 16, I'm 23. That's insane. It's not insane, David insisted, his voice firm. It's protection. You're a good man, Ethan. I trust you more than anyone. With you, she'd be safe. She wouldn't have to face the world's ugliness alone. Ethan rose from his chair, anger surging. Do you hear yourself? You're asking me to ruin her life in the name of protection. That's not safety. That's a prison. She deserves to grow up, to choose her own path. David's face darkened. You think I don't know what's best for her? You think I'd suggest this lightly? I see things you don't, Ethan. I know the dangers out there. Ethan's hands trembled as he raked them through his hair. You're blinded by fear. You want to save her, but this would destroy her, and me. The study door creaked. Both men turned sharply. Lily stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock. She had heard every word. For a moment, silence reigned, thick and suffocating. Lily's lips parted, but no sound came. Then, with tears brimming, she turned and fled down the hall, her footsteps echoing like gunshots through the house. Lily! Ethan called, rushing after her. But David remained frozen, his chest heaving. The weight of his desperation finally revealed. The line between duty and obsession had blurred, and now the truth hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. The Miller house was thick with silence the morning after Lily overheard David's plan. It wasn't the ordinary quiet of dawn. It was brittle, suffocating, as if every wall of the home had absorbed the shock of the previous night and now held its breath. Ethan hadn't slept. He'd stayed awake, pacing his room, listening for any sign of Lily. She hadn't emerged once. Sophia, however, had noticed. She always noticed. She saw the red rims around Lily's eyes when she finally came down for breakfast. The way her hands trembled as she tried to hold a spoon, the way Ethan hovered protectively near her. Sophia's suspicion, already sharp, now burned with certainty. Something had happened. David entered last, his jaw set, his expression unreadable. He took his seat at the head of the table, eyes sweeping over his family. His gaze lingered on Lily, but she avoided his stare, her body shrinking into itself. Ethan sat rigid beside her, his eyes fixed firmly on his father, daring him to say a word. Sophia broke the silence first. What's going on? She asked flatly. Because clearly something is. No one spoke. Forks clinked against plates, the ticking clock grew louder. Sophia slammed her hand against the table. Enough! I am sick of this house dripping with secrets. Someone better tell me why my husband looks like he's been caught in a sin. Why my son looks ready to kill him. And why that girl, she jabbed a finger toward Lily, looks like she's about to shatter. Ethan's chair scraped back violently. Don't you dare blame her for this. Blame her? Sophia sneered. Every problem in this family began the moment she walked in that door. And I want to know why. David's hand tightened around his coffee mug until his knuckles whitened. He opened his mouth to speak, but Ethan's voice cut through, raw and furious. Tell her, Dad, go on. Tell her your brilliant plan. Sophia's eyes narrowed. What plan? David hesitated. His gaze flicked to Lily, then back to Ethan. It was just an idea, he said carefully, his tone defensive. Nothing more. An idea? Ethan barked a bitter laugh. You wanted me to marry her. That was your idea. The words dropped like a bomb. Sophia went pale, her hand flying to her mouth. Then her face twisted, horror giving way to fury. You what? She turned on David, her voice rising. You've lost your mind. Absolutely lost it. David stood, his voice booming. You don't understand. None of you understand. It wasn't about desire, it wasn't about anything like that. It was about safety. Lily needs protection. The world is cruel, and she has no one else but us. With Ethan, she'd be trapped. Sophia roared, her voice trembling. Do you hear yourself? Do you know what you sound like? You're talking about shackling a child to her guardian like she's property. Lily flinched, tears spilling freely now. She pushed back her chair, but Ethan reached for her hand before she could run. Stay, he whispered. Don't let him make you feel like you're powerless. David's face softened, almost pleading now. I'm not the villain here. You don't see what I see. I've seen what happens when girls like her are left unprotected. I couldn't save... His voice cracked, and he pressed a hand to his eyes. I couldn't save Margaret, but I won't fail Lily. At the sound of her mother's name, Lily froze. Slowly she looked up, confusion clouding her expression. Margaret? She whispered. Sophia's lips tightened. Ethan's head whipped toward his father. David lowered his hand. His face was a map of grief and regret. "She was your mother's sister," he admitted softly. "She lived here once, long before you came. And she—" He swallowed hard. "She was hurt. I should have protected her. But I didn't, and I will never forgive myself." The revelation hit the room like a storm. Sophia let out a strangled sound. "So that's what this is? You're trying to rewrite the past? You're trying to fix your failures by controlling this girl's future?" "It's not control," David insisted. "It's redemption." "No," Ethan snapped, his voice shaking with rage. "It's obsession. You're drowning in guilt, and you're dragging her down with you." He turned to Lily, his expression fierce but gentle. "You don't owe him anything. Not his protection, not his redemption, nothing." Lily's breath came in ragged gasps, her mind spinning. She wanted to scream, to cry, to vanish. Instead, her voice came out small but steady. "I'm not Margaret. I'm not anyone else's second chance." The words cut through the room like a blade. David's face crumpled, but he said nothing. Sophia seized the moment, her fury boiling over. "You will not make decisions for her anymore," she declared, pointing a trembling finger at David. "You've crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. If you try to push this madness again, I swear, I will leave this house and I'll take her with me." David's eyes widened. "You would?" Sophia's voice dropped cold and certain. "Try me." The table stood between them, but the divide was deeper, wider, something that could never be bridged. Ethan rose, pulling Lily gently to her feet. "Come on," he murmured to her. "You don't need to hear any more of this." They left the dining room together, Lily clinging to his hand like a lifeline. Sophia remained standing, her chest heaving, while David sank back into his chair. His body slumped, his face hollow with defeat. The Miller family had always been fractured, but now the cracks had become chasms. And in the silence that followed, each of them knew there was no going back. The house did not feel like a home anymore. It felt like a cage rattling from the inside, its walls echoing with words no one wanted to remember. After that breakfast fight, silence reigned, not the comfortable kind, but the brittle quiet of people tiptoeing around a fracture, afraid the slightest sound might shatter it for good. Sophia avoided David as though he were a stranger. She stopped setting a place for him at the table, stopped folding his shirts, stopped even looking at him when he spoke. At night, she locked the bedroom door. During the day, she lingered near Lily, a protective shadow, her sharpness now redirected into a quiet, watchful resolve. Ethan stayed close to Lily too, but his presence was gentler. He walked her to school when David insisted on driving, and when his father barked orders, Ethan cut them down with curt replies. He no longer feared his father's anger, he was fueled by his own. And David? David grew thinner, his words fewer. He was a man stripped of authority, pacing the house like a ghost, still clinging to his belief that what he had wanted wasn't madness but necessity. But no one listened anymore. Not even Lily, especially not Lily. One late evening, Sophia found Lily sitting in the den with her backpack half-zipped. Inside were clothes, a toothbrush, a worn-out notebook. Sophia froze in the doorway. "You're leaving," she said flatly. Lily startled, her fingers fumbling on the zipper. I was just thinking about it." Sophia walked in, her heels clicking against the wood floor. "Don't think, decide. Because if you're running, you won't make it far alone." Lily's eyes brimmed with tears. "I don't want to cause any more problems here. Every day I stay, it gets worse." Her voice broke. "He wants things I don't understand. Things I can't give." Sophia's chest tightened. For the first time in weeks, she softened. "You don't owe him anything. Not your freedom. Not your future." She reached out, hesitated, then rested a hand on Lily's shoulder. "If you want to go, I'll help you." The words stunned Lily. She searched Sophia's face, expecting anger, expecting the usual bitterness. But all she found was weary determination. "Why?" Lily whispered. "Because I may hate what you represent," Sophia said, her voice low, "but I'll be damned before I let him destroy another girl's life to soothe his guilt." Tears slipped down Lily's cheeks. For the first time since coming to Willow Creek, she felt like someone was on her side without strings attached. That night, Sophia made her move. She packed a small suitcase for Lily, careful to choose practical things, warm clothes, the little cash she had stashed away, and the silver locket Sophia had once received from her mother. She placed it in Lily's hand without explanation. "You'll need something to remind you. You're worth more than what this house makes you feel," she said. Ethan discovered the plan by accident. He caught them whispering near the back door, the suitcase hidden in the shadows. His stomach clenched. "You're leaving?" His voice was a raw whisper. Lily looked at him, guilt flashing in her eyes. "I have to." "No." He stepped closer, desperate. "Not like this. If you leave without telling me where you're going, I'll lose my mind. At least let me come with you." Sophia cut in sharply. "No, you stay here. If both of you vanish, he'll go mad. At least if Ethan stays. David has a reason not to burn this whole place down looking for her." But Ethan's jaw hardened. "You don't understand. He won't stop anyway. He's obsessed. He'll hunt her down. And I won't let him." The three of them stood in the dark kitchen, the clock ticking like a countdown. Finally, Lily shook her head, her voice trembling. "I can't ask you to give up your life for me, Ethan." "You don't have to ask," he replied firmly. "I'm offering." Sophia's voice was sharp but trembling now. "This is madness. You're throwing your future away. Both of you." Ethan turned to her, his expression fierce. "And what future do I have in this house? Watching him unravel? Pretending I don't see what he's doing to her? No, if she goes, I go." For a long, tense moment, no one spoke. Then Sophia exhaled shakily. She looked at Lily, this girl she had resented, blamed, nearly hated, and for the first time, she saw her not as a symbol of the past, but as a victim of it. "Fine," Sophia whispered. "But you leave tonight. Before he notices. If he wakes and finds you gone..." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. They waited until the house was silent. David's snores drifted. Faintly from the upstairs study, he had taken to sleeping there instead of the bedroom, drowning his grief in whiskey. Sophia pressed the car keys into Ethan's hand. "Take my car. It's less noticeable than his truck. Drive east. Don't call. Don't write. At least not until you're safe." Lily threw her arms around Sophia, surprising them both. Sophia stiffened, then reluctantly hugged her back. For all her bitterness, something in her cracked at that moment. Ethan gripped his mother's hand one last time. "Thank you," he said hoarsely. "Don't thank me," Sophia murmured. "Just survive." And then, in the dead of night, Ethan and Lily slipped out the back door, suitcase in hand, hearts pounding. The car engine sputtered to life, headlights cutting through the darkness. Sophia stood in the doorway, watching them disappear into the night, her figure a lonely silhouette against the glow of the kitchen light. Upstairs, David stirred. He rolled over, the glass of whiskey slipping from his hand and crashing against the floor. His eyes flickered open, clouded with drink and grief. For a moment, he thought he heard the echo of tires crunching gravel. By the time he stumbled to the window, the road was empty. The dawn in Willow Creek broke cold and gray, the kind of morning where light felt reluctant to touch the earth. In the Miller house, that reluctance mirrored David's movements as he stumbled through the hall. The empty driveway hit him first. Then the silence, too quiet, too hollow. Lily's room was stripped bare, the bed neatly made but missing its softness. Ethan's closet half empty. For a long moment, he simply stood there, staring. Then the truth struck with violent clarity. They were gone. A sound tore from his throat, half roar, half sob. He staggered back, his fist smashing against the wall, the plaster cracking under the force. "No," he rasped. "No, no, no." Sophia appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, her face pale but resolute. "They're gone, David, accept it." His eyes blazed. "You helped them." Her silence was confirmation enough. His face contorted, betrayal carved deep in every line. "You took them from me." "No," she said quietly. "You lost them yourself. Long before last night." Her words only deepened his rage. He stormed through the house, searching for some trace, some note, some sign of where they had gone. But there was nothing. Only the lingering echo of their absence. Finally, he collapsed into the chair in his study, clutching an old photograph of Margaret, his hand trembling. "I won't lose her," he muttered to himself. "Not again. I'll find them." Miles away, Ethan and Lily sat in Sophia's old sedan, the road stretching endlessly eastward. Neither had spoken much since leaving. Lily clutched the locket Sophia had given her, the metal cool in her palm, grounding her in the storm of fear and guilt. Ethan's hands gripped the wheel tightly, his jaw set, eyes darting to every passing car as though expecting his father's truck to appear. Finally, Lily broke the silence. "He'll come after us." Ethan's throat tightened. "I know. Maybe we should have stayed." she whispered, guilt gnawing at her. You gave up everything, your home, your family, because of me. Ethan glanced at her, his expression softening despite the tension. Don't you dare blame yourself. I chose this. I'd choose it again. Her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel like she wasn't just a burden dragging everyone into ruin. But the weight of it was crushing. By the second day, David's desperation boiled into obsession. He called every contact, every friend Ethan had ever mentioned, stormed into places Lily might have gone. But there was no sign. His search became manic, his voice hoarse from shouting, his body worn down. Sophia watched him unravel with a cold, detached sorrow. She had braced herself for his rage, but what shook her was his grief, the way he clung to Margaret's memory like a lifeline, confusing Lily with the ghost of a girl he had failed long ago. You can't keep chasing shadows, she told him one night. If you love them, let them go. He turned on her, eyes wild. Love them? This isn't about love, it's about salvation. She's the only way I can make it right. Sophia flinched. In that moment, she realized fully, David was beyond saving. 2 weeks later, in a small town across the state line, Ethan and Lily found a fragile rhythm. They rented a room above a diner. Lily took shifts washing dishes. Ethan worked nights loading trucks. They were anonymous, just two faces among many, their pasts invisible. For the first time, Lily breathed without fear that every sound was his footsteps. Yet the shadow never fully left. At night, she dreamt of David's voice, heavy with obsession, whispering promises of protection that felt like chains. Ethan would wake to her muffled sobs, hold her until the trembling stopped, whispering, "You're safe. I've got you." But safety was fragile. One evening, as the diner closed, Lily stepped outside into the fading light. Across the street, a familiar figure stood beneath a flickering lamppost. His shoulders broad, his posture rigid. Her breath caught in her throat. "Ethan," she whispered when he came out behind her. David. He had found them. The confrontation was inevitable, explosive. David's voice cracked as he stepped forward, his hands trembling. "Lily, come home, please. I can't lose you." Ethan moved in front of her, his body a shield. "She's not going anywhere with you." David's face twisted, fury and anguish colliding. "You think you can protect her? You think you know what she needs? You're a boy playing hero. I'm her family." Lily's voice shook, but she stepped out from behind Ethan. For the first time, she faced David not as a frightened girl, but as someone who had learned the cost of silence. "No," she said firmly. "You're not my family. You're a prison. I'm done being your second chance." The words shattered him. He staggered back, eyes glistening, as if the ground beneath him had been ripped away. "Lily!" His voice broke. Ethan took Lily's hand, pulling her close. "You need to leave," he told his father, his voice steady. "For her. For yourself. If you ever loved her, let her go." For a moment, David looked like he might fight, might lunge forward and tear her away, but then his shoulders slumped, his body sagging under the weight of years of guilt. He nodded once, broken. Without another word, he turned and walked away, his figure dissolving into the night. Weeks later, life slowly pieced itself into something resembling normal. The nightmares dulled, though they never disappeared. Sophia sent a letter, unsigned, with only 4 words. "I hope you're safe." Lily kept it tucked inside her locket. Ethan and Lily sat together one quiet evening outside their rented room, the sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. For the first time in months, Lily smiled, not forced, not fleeting, but real. "Do you think we'll ever stop looking over our shoulders?" she asked softly. "Maybe not," Ethan admitted. "But maybe that's okay. As long as we're looking forward too." She leaned her head against his shoulder. The road behind them was scarred, the road ahead uncertain. But it was theirs, and that at last was enough.